Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central. And here's your host, Bob Hickey.
Hi, Foxborough. How are you doing? I'm Bob Hickey, your host for another great episode of Foxborough Central. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to sit down, talk with me and my guests as we learn about the interesting people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. I'm here today with my friend, Chief Ed O'Leary. Chief, how are you doing?
Good to see you.
It's good to see you. It is great to see you actually out here because it's your inaugural time on my show, but I know you've done many of these shows before with Charlie and Mike when they used to do this. So you've always been a great supporter of Foxborough Cable Access, and in turn, we love having you out here to share some of the good things that you're doing with the police department.
Well, I'm very fortunate. I work with a talented group of individuals that work tirelessly to make our community safe.
Well,
and we're really dependent on the help from our residents.
Well, it's not necessarily the direction we're going to go in today because, as you know, I don't really have any direction when I get into these programs often. A lot of times just sitting down with friends and talking. I hope the folks at home enjoy this sort of format, if you will. But, you know, you mentioned, I'll call it community policing and sort of a community partnership. And, you know, what horrible news out of Boston, but also what interesting unfolding of the events and the investigation as the FBI seemed to want to partner with the community in identifying some suspects they had. And I don't know if that's exactly what we're talking about here, but then the outpouring of support for the Watertown police in particular, but at the end, sort of shows a real positive partnering, if you will, or at least a good, real strong vibe between the communities and the police that they serve. So I like to think we have that here in Foxborough, and that a lot of what you do, goes towards that of getting us involved and us knowing the folks and us feeling as though you're really on our side, if you will. Is that really what community policing is, or?
Well, that's always what I have perceived it to be, Bob. We're really linked to members in our community, excuse me, whether it's businesses, our residents, so that when things do occur, we know that they can provide us with information. I'll give a good example. More recently, we've had several burglaries at different locations within the community, and information that we've gathered from residents that have made observations in their particular neighborhood have led the detectives to have different leads that they're following up on. Certainly there was, within the past week, we had a house break-in while a resident was there, which is a very scary situation. The perpetrator fled, but the information that we received from a neighbor as well as from the victim herself gave us an idea of who we're looking for, much like we saw with the marathon bombing. They were receiving tips, photos, information from thousands of individuals that were there in the area where the race took place, and it's from that type of information the FBI and the Boston Police and the state police were able to put together a package and then released the photos of the people that they believed were involved, and certainly that set off a whole chain of events leading to the capture of one individual and the other being killed in a firefight with small town Watertown police in the middle of the morning.
Yeah, not only was it and of course we all take a moment to remember the victims, the three from the marathon bombing, as well as the MIT police officer who was assassinated by the two brothers, but allegedly by the two brothers. But what an interesting and compelling story unfolded in front of our eyes through their use, when I say the investigators and the investigating team, and the political machine, also of incorporating social media and the traditional news media into the investigation by reaching out, seeking tips, seeking information, but then also with the shelter in place, we won't call it a lockdown, shelter in place. What a unique set of events that occurred. I mean, can anybody truly say they've seen a major metropolitan city shut down and everybody cooperating by staying where they were supposed to stay? What And it's never a feel good when you have tragedy, but it was a feel good response. And thankfully the conclusion happened the way it did without further loss of life. And there was also an MBTA police officer that was seriously injured. But it was just taking a step back. What an amazing response by everybody involved.
Well, it certainly was, Bob, and I think it goes to the fact, although Massachusetts people, I think, are independent, but they are willing to do things that benefit the good of all. Going back to a Patriot Day theme, if you would, we certainly saw it when we had the blizzard in February. The governor made a decision to ask people to stay off the roadways. They did so. It made it easier to get emergency equipment where it was needed, to plow the roads and keep them open so that when the storm was over, we didn't have bad incidents. And certainly the cooperation of the residents in that particular section from Boston, Cambridge, Watertown, Somerville, that followed that request certainly made it safer for the investigation to continue and eventually its resolution.
Well, and then to that end, the use of social media by law enforcement is something that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, wouldn't have even considered, and even as much as 2 years ago, probably would have said, well, that's an inconvenience. You're getting information out that we don't want out. But now it seems to be a different approach in this case.
Well, every case is entirely different, Bob, and in this case,
fair enough.
It is very noticeable that they needed to identify who these people were. The Boston head of the FBI is a very diligent individual. I've met him several times. And I think that he felt that in order to bring this case to resolution, we really needed the support of the community, which had been ongoing. You bring up social media. It has been a topic over the last several years in our professional journals, how to manage what we put out to the public and then being better able to analyze the information that may come in. We actually started a Facebook page about 60 days ago.
Really?
Thankfully, I have some, again, talented, more with it people that work with me.
Well, I'm not going to embarrass you by asking what the name of the Facebook page is, because unfortunately, I'm not as with it either, and I probably couldn't locate it. If I was in a brown paper bag, I couldn't Facebook my way out of it. But
well, it's Foxborough Police. And we do have a site that is updated with different incidents that have been occurring over the last 60 days, whether it was the governor's shutdown of the roadways in February to our most recent house breaks, just to let the public know, because many younger people, I'm talking about my children, very rarely read print media in this day and age.
That is so true.
It's a good way that people younger than me, which just about everybody, can access news and important news and have feedback that they can get back if they know something. So I think our whole society is transitioning to a different format, and we want to stay up to date with the different forms of communication. And that goes back to the talented staff that I work with.
So your team works on a Facebook page and you put out information so people can friend the Foxborough Police Department.
That's correct.
Or you would friend them back.
Correct.
And then they sign up and they get this information feed. Now, got to ask, do you tweet?
What's that? No, I haven't quite reached that stage yet, but I'm sure that as we transition to the social media, that may happen to provide quicker information.
But going back to the hurricanes that we had, I use them together, hurricanes, the winter storm and then the hurricane. But the use of the reverse 911, that's a technology that is relatively new as far as using it as a communication tool. I know that we've had that before but wasn't really fully implemented, but it really came out with the reverse 911 usage during those two events, as well as the school department most recently with, there was a school bus accident on Mechanic Street, and Superintendent Spinelli did a great job of communicating out to worried parents about the event itself and assurances as to the status of any potentially injured students. And I thought that was a really positive use of the reverse 911 system, although it's not truly a national or a state emergency. It's understanding about communication and understanding about what's important for folks to know. So, you know, it's different now than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Well, it certainly has transitioned that perhaps for most of our residents, the only local information would be whether the weekly Foxborough Reporter or the Sun Chronicle might run small news pieces, but now we have the capability of providing a wide mass of our population with alerts, timely information, doing it judiciously, because I don't think they want a daily call out. But
the boy who cried wolf too many times, right? Sure.
But on serious issues that impact people, that people are going to be concerned about, because what we're finding is people themselves are hearing from social media about things happening in the community. And they don't know whether it's true, because there's a certain percentage of information that's passed on.
Wait, you mean that everything I read on the internet isn't true?
That's what they say. You
Really?
know,
Well,
it shocked me when I first heard that. But I think that at least if people hear directly from town government, our school system, the police department, that you know that it's something that's part of our strategic plan during the time of an emergency to inform the public, but also if we're looking for certain information, for them to have a resource to call us back as a reminder. I think nothing is more frustrating. I remember doing it as a patrolman. I hear my officers, when they go door to door following a burglary, that somebody says, well, you know, I saw this car at the end of the street that I didn't recognize. And I think it was a gray car. And, oh, well, when did you see it? Oh, about 2 hours before you came over, and you find out that the burglary had just happened. But people see things, and very often they're hesitant to call us. And if anything, more recently, much like the incident in Boston, if you see something, say something.
Right.
You know, we have staff that are out in their neighborhoods. It's not an inconvenience for the officers to go over and just take a look at who's there or what's there. Or if you do see something, even if you don't call right away, write it down right away. Because we all have a tendency as time goes past to forget certain elements. But we're really dependent on the cooperation that we get from our Foxborough residents.
So when you say see something, hear something, it's one of those things where, okay, I see something, but do I call 911? I mean, really, is this an emergency? Am I going to be made fun of? And there's going to be a false call? I see a red car at the end of my street that I don't recognize, has been there for 5 minutes taking pictures. Could be just that they like history and they're taking pictures of historical district. We've seen that many times on Baker Street. So when does it cross the line of important or nuisance?
Well, again, that's an assessment, but it seems like it happens with enough frequency when we're doing follow-ups that somebody had seen something, or for example, in the latest round of burglaries, a young woman was going door to door. A young white woman with long black hair, asking if anybody had seen her missing dog, and gave a pretty elaborate description
with a
to
backpack?
Distract the person. At the particular time, with several of the incidents, had not had a backpack.
Right.
But the person remembered having a conversation with her when the officers came around, and not only that, remembered seeing a particular type vehicle parked at the end of the driveway. And that was right across from a home that had been burglarized.
Right.
So it's the type of thing where it's, again, that information that people see when they're approached that is going to help us eventually to a solution on this crime. But more importantly, when something happens that's so unusual that maybe not necessarily a 911 call, but certainly to the main business line, just to alert something. I just feel strange about this person coming door to door. Maybe you'll find out that it's just a vendor. For example, Verizon has had a sales team in
Sure.
most recently, and we check all those people before they're allowed to solicit here in our community. But it might be something as simple as that. The people are dressed, with the Verizon tag. They have their ID cards. But it might be somebody that the story just doesn't sound right.
Well, and all people who solicit, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't they also supposed to get approval from the local police department to do door-to-door solicitation?
Right. We do have groups that come in. We do background checks to make sure that the people that are going door-to-door in our community don't pose a danger to our residents. So we do a screening of those people. And although the companies do send certain people, there may be people amongst the group that maybe aren't the right mix for our community. But those are few and far between. And sometimes groups will come in, they'll start in like Sharon, have permission there, and then, come into Foxborough, sort of migrate, because to them, they don't know the political boundaries because many of them are from out of state.
And they're hustling, they're trying to make their money, they're trying to do whatever it is they're trying to do. Whether it's legitimate or not legitimate, they're still working. And so sometimes a friendly call from a concerned resident will alert you that this is going on.
That's true. So.
And the business line, of course, you mentioned earlier, is 508-543-4343.
You could either use that line, the 4343, or the 1212.
1212.
So that's an alternative to 911. And again, if you're talking on a cell phone, which many of our residents use now instead of a hard line, when you dial 911, that goes to the state police barracks, actually the state police dispatch center up in Framingham, and then has to be transferred back to a local police department. So it's really essential if you're using a cell phone on 911 to let them know the community that you're in so that they can transfer that call to the appropriate agency that can respond.
And the 911 call, of course, is a recorded line. It's also for emergencies only, but sometimes it's appropriate to use that for this type of thing, or would you prefer they call the business line?
I think the business line is more appropriate. I mean, if they see an ongoing crime, then that's very appropriate on the landline, to use 911, and somebody beyond my technological ability told me you could preload our business line into your phone so that you wouldn't have to go through the agony of finding the keypad.
It is possible. I know that as well. However, I've always thought that 543-4343 was the perfect,
easiest to remember.
And that goes back to the day before the 911 code, when most police departments would use that as their last.
That was our primary answering point. Foxborough actually transitioned to the original 911 setup back in the 87-88 era.
Okay.
We became a 911 community. And then as technology has escalated tremendously, we went to the E911 that covers a greater range of options such as cell phones and other media.
E911.
Right.
See, that's why I love having these programs, because you learn something new every day. I didn't even know what E911 is, and I'm still not sure I do.
It's for enhanced 911.
Okay, so it can return and sort of trace a call
Correct. In fact, if from reading the investigations, one of the things that they were trying to do is follow a cell phone from the hijacked car, because
referring, of course, to the Boston Marathon issue.
And they were able to have a general direct location. This came into play here in our community last year when somebody was very concerned about a loved one that may be in danger, and he had been talking on the cell phone, and through the enhanced technology, we were able to locate the individual here in Foxborough, get them the medical help they needed, and so we had a very positive result from using that technology, not so much as to fight crime, but to assist somebody in need.
That's a really interesting piece, because it shows not only the importance of it from an investigative standpoint, but also the immediacy of it that allows you to react real time and prevent something bad from happening. That's very impressive. I was not aware that E911 was that quick of a response. I always thought that you had to get a warrant to access the records and that sort of thing.
Not in all cases. We're not invading anybody's privacy. We're not looking at their phone call records. We're just trying to locate where they are because something's been brought to our attention that indicates that person may be in danger.
The theme of today's program, of course, is community partnership and community policing. And please stay tuned to the same channel for other exciting episodes with the chief. We're going to do other ones that you'll be able to watch. Love having this conversation. Going to the Boston Marathon event that happened in social media, and I'm not on social media, but my daughter is. And talking earlier, I know your family's a little bit moved beyond the high school years. We're there, and one of my favorite tweets. I'll call it a post. I don't know exactly what the technology was, but it took the world 10 years to find Osama bin Laden. Took a bunch of pissed off Bostonians only 4 days. So, it's one way to look at how interesting it is, the partnering and the openness of the investigation. I know that the investigation wasn't truly completely open. That would be silly to think, but just having it as open as it was kept us riveted and made us, and I think part of that is also why on Friday the cooperation was so high, because we all felt as though we were part of it with the cancellation of the Bruins games and the Celtics games and everybody being made aware of where the investigation was at. And absolutely 500,000 people didn't feel as though we were part of it, but we were informed. We did know what was going on. And when the call came Friday morning, depending upon when you're watching this, for everybody to shelter in place, there wasn't a need to explain why. It was okay.
Exactly. In fact, I think a strong part of that investigation was the strategic communication of sharing information with the public. Not just through the typical media sources, although that was taking place, but in other forums that the public has ready access to and is already using. When you take a look at the demographics, most of the people in the Boston area are frequent users of social media. Yeah. And it was a method that they could get information out, certainly not disclose integral parts of the ongoing investigation, but make the public more aware of what work was being done, how they could help, and in the case of having this, shelter in place or stay in place, why it was so necessary, because you could see the whole story unfolding.
Well, in reading, so I'm an old fogey, of course, I read print newspaper, and I was reading the Boston Globe, and there was a great story on the communication skills of Commissioner Davis in Boston, Commissioner of the Boston Police Department, and his ability to get messages out clearly, concisely, the right tone, if you will, not condescending and not, between there and between alarmist, but quite frankly, we've got dangerous people out there. They will hurt people, and we need to be vigilant. And at the end, that's how he was caught. There was somebody who, after the shelter in place was pulled back, somebody went out, was vigilant, saw something,
absolutely,
and reported it immediately. So, had that level of communication not been there from the outset, then perhaps the communication would not have been there at the end.
Oh, that's true. It was part of the investigative process, much like we've done a couple of Facebook's postings about the burglaries we've had, not certainly to make the community afraid, but just to make them more alert.
Aware of what's going on, certainly.
I've been doing sort of a web-based newsletter since in 2005 we initiated it, just so that we have a news group. It's about 150 members, so as things happen in the community, I've been updating them, but that's a small fraction of the people that have been in to do views on our Facebook page.
So if people wanted to sign up for this electronic newsletter, how would they do that?
They could go to Yahoo Groups, and then from Yahoo Groups...
I'm writing this down.
Okay. Go to Foxborough Police on a search. And
Spelled the company way or spelled the old way?
our news group is the old way.
Foxborough, UGH?
No, I'm sorry, the company way.
The company way.
Okay, now I get it.
No UG.
No UG.
Foxborough?
Foxborough
Group?
Police.
Foxborough Police.
And it will bring you up to the group so that other people could join the news group. I just recently sent out something I saw yesterday when I was going through my email to forward about impacts of teen drinking. It was kind of something that was shocking to me, a study that was recently released, funded by the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, that only 30% of teens that end up dying with 30% die in traffic accidents that die as a result of abuse of alcohol.
Okay.
And it was, that surprised me because I figured it would be a much higher percentage. However, there were other situations, whether it was alcohol poisoning, some form of violence, or even harming themselves as a result of the abuse of alcohol.
And of course, we've already done a program, for those of you watching at home, we've already done a program, and I hope you've had an opportunity to see it. And if not, please log into our website to see a replay of that one at www.fcatv.org. And that, of course, was a program about teen dating violence and teen drinking and prom awareness, which I hope you saw on this cable channel at an earlier date. So, Chief, with that information, and that is just a snippet of some of the things you're putting in the newsletter.
Right.
My challenge to you at home, folks, is somehow, I'm not sure how, but somehow get onto the Yahoo group. And of course, you can see on the graphics that appear on the screen, go into Yahoo groups to Foxborough Police and sign up for the Chief's newsletter. And let's see if he gets a spike. Let's see if we can impress him with our viewership. Get a spike on that. And then when he comes back to talk to us again later, he'll come back and say, thank you, viewers of Foxborough Central, for spiking my,
That's right.
spiking my numbers. And of course, with that, you can also join the befriended by the Foxborough Police Department on Facebook. And if you see something, if you hear something, say something by contacting Chief or one of his team members at the Foxborough Police Department at 508-543-4343 or 508-543-1212. Chief, we are so close to being out of time.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the last word. We're talking about social media. We're talking about community policing. We've covered so many topics, and yet we haven't even started.
Well, that's true, Bob. I think we've gone a little bit far afield from our earlier discussion. However, I do want to mention two particular dates, if I could, and maybe we could have a follow-up show later.
Well, actually, what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the previous show that folks have already seen, and that, of course, was the Hugs?
Yes, Hugs Foxborough.
Which folks saw, which was part of the schools, and you gave that presentation at the high school this past May 8th.
Well, we actually are doing something with Hugs in cooperation with other people that is taking place on May 8th. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important for the community after seeing the dangers that can occur within a community. And it's really essential, I think, for people to be more aware of what does occur. And certainly on May 9th, we're going to be doing a prom contract signing as part of our annual ritual to make parents and juniors and seniors aware of some of the issues surrounding teen drug abuse.
Folks, that sounds like a whole nother program. I'm sure you'll stay tuned and come back to us again for another exciting episode of Foxborough Central. Chief, I want to thank you for taking the time to come out.
No problem, Bob.
Thank you, everybody, for taking a little time
Thank
to
you.
sit with me, have a cup of coffee, and enjoy an episode of Foxborough Central as we learned about the people, events, and organizations, Foxborough Police, that make Foxborough the gem of Norfolk County. If you would like to at some point volunteer for cable access and help bring these wonderful messages out to your community, check us out at 28 Central Street or call our business line at 543-4757. On behalf of all the volunteers, staff, and directors of Foxborough Cable Access, including Betty Travers, Deb Stores behind the cameras, and Gary Nash making it all happen behind the glass, and Executive Director Mike Glover, I'm Bob Hickey, wishing you to have a great day, Foxborough. Take care.